Now, we are moments away from a pivotal day in the prosecutor's sex trafficking and racketeering case against Sean Combs. Today, Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, is expected to take the stand. She is the woman he has seen attacking in that hotel hallway in surveillance video from 2016. Prosecutors yesterday accused Combs of running a criminal enterprise to coerce women into sex, and Cassie Ventura is central to their case. Here's what her lawyer said this morning.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prosecutors plan to show the jury video of what Combs called freak-offs, drug-fueled, days-long sexual performances. Combs' lawyers argue the videos will show consent, not coercion. One of his lawyers saying, quote, "The evidence is going to show you a very flawed individual, but it will not show you a racketeer, a sex trafficker, or somebody transporting for prostitution." With us now, CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Jennifer Rogers and defense attorney Misty Marris, both here for us today. Thank you for being here. I want to start with you, Jennifer. What did the prosecution try to establish with the first witnesses, and how will they use Cassie Ventura in this case? How will she be used as a storyteller, I suspect, for the jury?
Yeah, she's really the key here. You know, sometimes prosecutors put on an FBI agent, for example, to be kind of the narrator of what happened here. But in this case, Cassie Ventura is that narrator. They need to show that this was not just sex, right? This was coercion. This was a concerted plan involving not just him, but a lot of other people, including people who worked for him, to bring people across state lines for these big sex parties, and that it was not voluntary. So that's really what she needs to establish here. And the other witnesses, you talked about the two that we've seen so far, and a bunch of stuff that is to come, is to corroborate her, to add to that story, to make sure to the jury, to make clear that it is coercive and not voluntary. We have other women too who will be adding to that story too.
Misty, we heard the defense lay out its version as well yesterday. The first day was there was a lot going on. We not only heard opening statements, but we got to see two witnesses. What did the jury hear about the defense in this case?
Well, this is all about coercion versus consent. So the defense was really laying out what the jury was going to hear and why they should view it with some skepticism. So first, it's Cassie Ventura. She's in a over decade-long relationship with Combs. And so she might have motivations outside of just telling the truth and being honest in court with respect to the criminal trial. And some of those motivations they pointed to are monetary, that she brought a civil lawsuit, which she received a compensation, and also that they had a relationship that was tumultuous. It was fraught with domestic violence. They had to fall on the sword there, Sarah. But it simply isn't sex trafficking. The defense knew that the jury was going to see that terrible video from the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. And what the defense tried to do was put that in a box and basically say, this is an isolated incident fueled by jealousy. It doesn't have anything to do with a broader conspiracy or sex trafficking. And then they pointed to the other victims that will be heard. One, again, in a personal relationship with Combs, another his longtime assistant. And they tried to lay skepticism right from the get-go.
And I imagine prosecutors, Jennifer, will use that video to say she was frightened, she was trying to do something, and this is how he acts when you don't do what he says. Curious, though, how difficult it is to try a case like this. Racketeering and sex trafficking, I mean, it is very, very, very hard to prove. You've got to have a lot of evidence for a jury to see this beyond a reasonable doubt, do you not?
Yeah, it's technical. And the other issue is usually in a racketeering conspiracy, the object is obviously illegal, right? You're trying to defraud people of money. You're trying to extort people for money. This is like you're trying to coerce people for sex, but sex is also a private thing. I mean, Combs' defense is this wasn't about a conspiracy for illegal purposes. This is about my private sex life, and domestic violence, as Misty said, is a separate box. So prosecutors have a pretty tall hill to climb here to convince the jurors that this behavior that they're going to see, that the defense is admitting, actually goes to the criminal elements of the case. So I think it's not a slam dunk for sure.
Misty, I'm just curious how the defense will go about cross-examining Cassie Ventura. She is visibly pregnant. She is going to, I'm sure, share some very emotional testimony. How do they go about this?
Sarah, this is going to be a real tough tightrope for the defense to walk, because on one hand, she is the prosecution's star witness. Not only is she going to tell her story in detail, they've seen the video, she's going to talk about other similar acts that happened to her over their 10-year relationship. And she's going to expand upon that and say, well, this also applies. This is the type of thing he did to get people in line in the criminal conspiracy and to get people to participate in these freak-offs. So she's so key. The defense is really going to have to go after her hard. But you point out a great thing. She's 8 months pregnant. She's going to be on the stand. Optically, that's really tough in front of the jury. They also know she's at least a victim of what they saw in that video, and they saw that video 4 times yesterday. So it's going to be something the defense needs to get this information on the record about to raise that skepticism, but also wants to avoid being a victim blamer, because even if you don't believe it's sex trafficking conspiracy, there's at least a domestic violence element that is obvious and conceded by the defense.
Yeah, the fact that it's conceded by the defense, this domestic violence incident, the way in which the defense is sort of going hard to say, yes, this happened, but does that sit well with the jury? You know, as the jury is watching these pictures of what's happening here, when she will probably testify, likely expected to testify, this is how we kept people in line. That's a pretty hard thing for the defense to deal with, is it not?
Well, they had to do it, right, because of the video, but they also do gain credibility. When you admit things and concede things, then the jury says, oh, okay, well, they're not pushing back on every piece of evidence. They're admitting some of it, so that makes it more credible when they push back on other things. So it was the obvious path here, given the evidence of the videotape, but it's a smart path, too. And, you know, like I said, given the kind of mismatch between the typical racketeering conspiracy and this case, you know, I could have some traction. We'll see how it goes.
Misty Marris, Jennifer Rogers, this is going to go on for, I think, about 8 weeks. So we've got a long bit of evidence and cross-examination to go through on a daily basis. But I do appreciate you being here this morning on this Tuesday morning. John Berman.
All right.